Okay, this is lecture 12. It's using encryption wisely. And there is no assignment for this material, but there is definitely test questions on it. So be careful there. Okay. This is also, both of these are somewhat short tonight. It says encryption provides a false sense of security. Okay. Prime example, my car. You know, I have a key for my car. I'm assuming you all have keys for your car. Have you ever forgot to lock it? I did yesterday. It's like, but I have a key, I have a lock, so I assume it's secure, but sometimes I forget to use it correctly. Same thing with encryption. Just because you're using encryption, are you using it correctly? Is it the up-to-date version? I mean, like WEP, Wired Equivalency Protocol. Y'all remember WEP? It's supposed to be equivalent to wired. Obviously not. So the point is, not all encryption works the best, and are you using it correctly? It must be used correctly. I must lock my car. Okay? It has a key, but if I don't lock it, what good is that? Okay? We're going to talk about some of the practices involved and some of the protocols. Protocols are pretty much the different encryption we're learning. See? Don't show again. Okay.
Usually
all right.
Talk to IT services.
It does it. I don't.
It does it to every single one.
It does always.
You have to talk to IT services.
You watch years worth of videos; they're always there. I don't know what the deal is. Okay. So let's talk about performance. Okay. Delay time. We have stream, block, and block. Okay. Let me explain what that means. So a stream cipher encrypts bit by bit, basically. Okay? So there's really no delay. As fast as it receives the bits, it goes on. Stream block, that might be a stream with a smaller block, but then block is just a big block like DES. So if I'm a very slow typist, obviously the block would have a much more of a delay because it's got to wait until I typed how many bits in the DES block? 64 bits, okay. So you have to get up to that point. So that's how that works, okay. Oh, obviously it's right there anyway. There's a 64-bit block. It's okay. For forensics, 2 different weeks, I left the answers up there.
I did see those. I did actually because it was the recap.
Yes, I couldn't believe it. I did it once, and I'm like, what an idiot. Then I did it again. I'm like, seriously. So I did go back and remove them all.
Let's say you didn't do that with us.
I know.
I demand a recap.
That's the Anastasia saw it once, I think. Didn't you see it? Oh, darn it. See, they're on YouTube, believe it or not. They're just not linked. You have to have the link. So they're not published anywhere. So, I mean, they're linked, but they're not
Well, if
published.
they're on YouTube, then.
But they're not published.
Somebody's downloaded.
But they're still on YouTube.
Oh, yeah, someone's got them. But all right. But again, they're changing next semester anyway. So I change them. I try to change them every year. Okay. RSA says 100 to 200-bit blocks. Okay. Actually, we haven't covered RSA yet, but we're going to be doing that tonight. Okay. Shorter blocks is smaller, better security. Now, speed, definitely a test question on this last section. Symmetrics are 10,000 plus times faster. These are the same key for encryption and decryption, much faster. Hardware is always faster. But that brings up a question. I think I might have mentioned it last time. So if I have a dedicated firewall, whatever brand that happens to be, is that hardware or software?
Hardware. Both-ish.
It's kind of an ish. It's hardware, but the hardware is running software. But it's a dedicated piece of hardware running specific software, so it's not like Windows running whatever. So it's kind of a weird question. Okay, so RSA 220 K bits per second versus 0.5 with software. That's a big difference. Okay, DES 1.2 million compared to 400,000. That's a big difference, hardware to software. Okay, so, all right. Block replay. Okay, I learned way back in 92 or 93, when I took my very first networking course, taught by, not Finch, George Floyd. He actually helped install the turnpike system. And it was funny because he was telling us when they installed it, they had an issue with gophers were eating through the fiber optic cable. Just the red ones, though. They never could figure out why. So they always had to keep replacing it. Probably. Okay, but back when I was taking the very first course, years ago, there was a video online where there was a ATM exploit what someone had done. You know how ATMs, in the past, they worked through phone lines.
Yeah.
You would be sitting there at your ATM, I want to get my money out. It would dial the bank and do all this stuff. Well, someone recorded it and played it back to the ATM. So they literally just recorded it, and like on an old tape recorder, just hit play, money came out, play, money came out, play, money came out. And now it doesn't work anything like that. But I mean, think about it. I mean, someone just kept replaying the "Give me money" over and over and over. So it was pretty scary. Okay. But imagine if we have a block, we have a certain number of bits for a depositor, a certain number of bits for source. Someone can quickly change something. Just change the source. Y'all heard one of my videos where I might have said it in here even about that game I used to play when I was in the dorms in Germany? Aces, did I ever tell you that one?
I know,
Okay, I'll tell you. Okay, I don't remember which class I told it in, but back in the old Commodore 64 128 days, we had this game. I was in Ramstein, Germany, living in the dorm. It was an exciting time in my life, but I had this game. Basically flying an airplane, okay? And you get points by however many people that you killed. So what we do is in the dorm, we all get in there and play this game. And it was my computer, so it stayed in my room. And I would always have the high score, but people would play till they beat my score. Then we would adjourn for the night, and we'd all go to bed and get up the next morning, go to work. And then what I would do is I would actually use a hex editor and go in and edit the score, my score, so it was just higher than theirs, and save it. So the next day we come home from work, and they look at it, they're like, dude, did you stay up all night long getting? So they'd try, they'd play forever until they could beat my score. Then I'd literally just open the hex editor, change the score, and save it again. But that's basically what's happening here. What if I went to your bank when you're trying to get money out and change it to my bank? You know, for the receiving bank's information, okay? So, kind of funny stuff. But yeah, I think I must have told them at one point. But that was...
I don't think you did.
I can't remember. But it was like, they'd sit there and they'd be like, how? Because literally, we'd be done at midnight. Got to be working 7 in the morning. So when did I have a chance to play? And then every day I'd have the higher score. So they were getting
You
pissed.
should tell them now. I've been the longest
Yeah.
ever.
I don't remember who they are now.
I think I know he didn't tell him.
Okay.
Because
Okay. So block replay. We can XOR blocks together. That would help. There's lots of stuff we can do. And actually, SSL has it built into it now. It doesn't allow replay. Okay. Encryption. We know how encryption works. We can encrypt our plain text with a key and get our ciphertext. Then we can take our second plain text. We covered this last week. Remember we had the ECB and code block and all those. So our second plain text, XORed with our ciphertext to get our next one, and then so on and so forth. So we can actually XOR with the previous block. Y'all remember that from last week? Electronic code book and all that? Mm-hmm. Hopefully y'all remember that. Okay. Same with decryption. Works basically the same way. Okay. Initial chaining value. This is what they talk about on the imitation game. It says blocks chain conceal identical blocks, but what if they start with something like U.S. Army HQ? Okay. Then that actually, it ruins it a little bit. Okay. A random vector would be much better. Okay. Something, because if it always starts with the same block, that's an issue.
Kind of like with the invitation game.
Exactly, where they had Heil Hitler and something in there. I mean, wow, that's...
The morning weather report is.
Yeah, I just finished reading Spam Nation, another excellent book by Brian Krebs. I'm reading the Kevin Sorbo book now, but I'm getting ready to read the Enigma Meme, the actual book that movie was based upon. If you know anything about books and movies, the books are always better. So I'm getting ready to read that one. I just haven't got there yet, but yeah. So all right, so let's move on here. One-way encryption. We've actually covered this already a little bit. Didn't we do that? We did the one-way encryption already, didn't we? I showed a picture of the windshield. Yeah, we did that. Okay. But you can very easily compute one way, but you can't go back the other way. Okay. So we pretty much covered that. Yeah, you don't need any more in there. What they're really talking about is the different functions you use. That's all. It's very hard to go backwards. Okay. Cryptographic sealing gives us integrity. Is integrity important? Yeah. I mean, you know, in the military, is everyone in the prior military in here? Air Force? Yeah, that was one of the service before self and integrity above all. That's a big deal. Okay. But integrity, that's kind of important, okay? So we're worried now with what's in the data rather than the secrecy of it, okay? So your grades are not secret, but we want to make sure they're the correct grades, okay? So what if we store the file along with a hash of the file? That way, if the file gets manipulated in any way, and we rerun the hash against the file, it won't match.
But if they manipulate and store the hash.
Right, if they had the file in the hash, then they could overwrote both of them, yes. But actually brings up a question. There was a guy, Mark Davis, up at University of Tulsa. He was working on a project when I was there. I don't know if he ever finished it, but y'all know what DVDs are. Y'all know you have a limited length of time they can be used. Y'all know floppy drives have a lifespan as well. They're usually about 2 years.
Yeah.
Because the magnetic actually goes away. So he was working on a project, so we got all this evidence for court. Sometimes cases don't go to court for 10, 15, 20 years. What happens to that DVD?
Deteriorating.
Starts degrading. So what do? Do you make it every year you have to go back and re-image all the evidence? I don't know if he ever came up with a plan for that. But that, if you think about it over the long term, that's an issue. It's a real big issue. Actually, I think it was the week before last, Virginia is now one of the board members on the Carl Albert Middle School band. She was the photographer, now she's the board, whatever. But she just helps out with the band. Well, they needed the bylaws. Well, they were on floppy disk. And the best part, one of the floppy disks says, intermittent disk only works sometimes. I'm like, only works sometimes and they still have it on a floppy disk? Why didn't you cut it off? But it turns out we actually were able to read it just fine. Get everything off. But come on, floppy disk. Does anyone still have data on floppy disks?
The company I work for, the last company I work for.
Oh, look, she's got I had a box of floppies on my desk at home, and I'm like, what I like to do is whenever Virginia and the kids go away, that's the time when I can clean stuff. Because no one knows. Especially when they're gone, and they're gone on that next Monday when the trash truck comes. Because it's too late at that point. But I found an entire box of all my floppy drives or floppy disks that were labeled and everything. I'm like, no, throw it in the trash. But it was funny. But yeah, that stuff does degrade. So I don't know what's going to happen. Okay, so cryptographic checksum could be the last block chained to it or whatever. So, it's a way of, keeping it. Okay, authentication, we have biometrics. That's, I got the thumbprint reader right here, so I can get into my phone just with my thumbprint. Okay, do you think that's foolproof? I would say no. I really don't think so. I had eye surgery years ago. And at one point, we actually had a retina scanner, just a cheapy one. And I could always register with it, but I could never authenticate with it. Because it couldn't read my retinas correctly twice. We tried it 1,000 times. I think we finally got rid of the darn thing. But biometrics is one of those things that, unless you're paying a lot of money, it's not going to work very well.
It's like some people don't have really good
Yeah, that's Eileen doesn't have good fingerprints.
You got
Yeah.
rid of all the biometrics.
Yeah, we got rid of all the scanners on the doors and everything because they were just giving us issues. Timestamps are good, prevent replay, but what if the timestamps are forged? That's another issue. All right, sender and receiver timestamps. I mean, email. Do you realize email is sent in plain text? Even if there's an attachment, the attachment is encoded, but still, the email is still in plain text. You can edit emails?
Yeah.
You can. I've done that. Maybe. A couple times. Can very easily go to my computer, edit, email, change it, save, done. So, so was that a really good way of proving anything? No. Okay. So timestamps must match. No. So, all right. All right, so we talked about some of these. Electronic code book, cipher block chaining. I don't think we talked about the last two, did we? Cipher feedback. Let's talk about these because we did mention some of these, didn't we?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go through them again. Electronic code book. We had our plain text, and it produced the same ciphertext every time. So if we had the same plain text and the same key, we got the same ciphertext every time. Okay. And is one decryption? Okay, and there it is. That's decryption right there. Yeah. Okay. All right, each block is encrypted identically plain text blocks produce identical ciphertext blocks, okay? Cipher blockchain, here's where we had our initialization vector. We XORed it with our plain text, and that result was XORed with the next one, and so on and so forth, okay? All right, now there's the decryption of that. You'll notice the initialization vector, instead of at the top, it's now at the bottom. So it prevents replay, it is self-healing, it corrects after a time period, after so many blocks. All right, and they walk you through. You don't need to know the exact how the formulas work for encryption and decryption. That's not important. Okay, so I do give you a picture of one of them. You tell me which one it is. Okay, cipher feedback, again, initialization vector. Then we have our plaintext coming in after the fact. Then that becomes the ciphertext and also the next one. So you see initialization vector moved, and our plaintext came in at a different spot. Okay. So just, the way I learned these things, when I went through the class in Tulsa, well, I had pictures of these things, and I would make things to study by. And there they had an indoor track at Tulsa, an elevated track inside the gym. It was kind of nice, because I would walk one revolution around the track for each question. So when I got to this, I would sit there and stare at this question and look at it over and over while I walked around the gym one time. And I tell you, it helped quite a bit. Then you go to the next question and walk around again. That way you get some exercise, plus you get to remember what it is. And I tell you, it really made a difference in my study habits. Okay. So block nature of DES is inconvenient. What if we have a partial block? That could be an issue. Okay, it must be padded with something. Okay, encryption cannot begin until we have an entire block. You have to have the entire thing. Okay, now block stream encryption errors only affects the next 8 characters when it's a streamed one. Let's see, there's output feedback. Now the difference here is where this stuff, right? The line here was down here before. Okay, let me go back a couple. See it? So we encrypted the initialization vector with the key, then we XORed the plain text. That result became ciphertext in the next initialization vector. With output feedback, initialization vector and key the same way. That result becomes the next input, and the plain text gets XORed after the fact. Okay? I don't know an easy way to tell you to remember that. But so the term XORed, we know what XOR is. It's generated independently in plain text and ciphertext. Okay. The initialization vector is used as the seed for the next one. That's what we see it brought in at the top. Okay. All right. And that's all of that one. Let me stop this one.